So if you remember from last week, our topic moves to the emptiness. The emptiness or shunyata means two things. One, for common, it refers to the emptiness of the wisdom of emptiness, referred to the two vehicles practitioners that they understand, help us understand that what kind of attachment we have, including the the self and the Dharma, and the emptiness and the sunyata can help us to detach from the those attachments that eventually bring us lots of suffering and keep us in the samsara, life after life. And then at the same time, Zongmi, the author, used the middle way concept to provide another view of the emptiness, is called the distinct. That refers to that which only the Bodhisattva understood, because it intimates the Buddha nature. So basically, from Nagarjuna's point of view, that the emptiness, the emptiness or the sunyata, in one way to help all the practitioners to negate all the attachment. And at the same time, it kind of gives us a hint that there is not, everything is gone and become nothingness. And there is something behind that that is still there, and that is the same among all of the sentient beings. And it's just not self or the Dharma, and also for all the sentient beings. So this become a bridge. So the last talk about emptiness become a bridge to today's talk. And so if just a quick recall of Zongmi's questioning about the teaching of refutation of phenomenon appearance. So when we practice the emptiness, when we try to detach the notion of subjectivity and objectivity, then who is the one, to know that the objectivity and subjectivities do not exist? Who is the one to know this emptiness? Okay, so that is the question that help Zongmi continue to the last and highest levels of the teaching. What is the nature of enlightenment? Okay, so this last and highest teaching is called the teaching of the one vehicle that reveals the nature. Okay, so in the Sastra, Zongmi says that all sentient beings without exception have the intrinsically enlightened true mind. And from time without beginning, it is permanently abiding and immaculate. It is shining, obscure, clear, and bright, ever-present awareness. And it is also called the Buddha nature and or the Tathāgatagarbha. Okay, so from this paragraph, it says a lot. Okay, first of all, what is our intrinsic enlightenment? Okay, there are three things that we need to talk about, 3 or 4. Intrinsic enlightenment. Okay, here, intrinsically enlightened mind and the true mind. And also we need to understand what Buddha nature or Tathāgatagarbha is. So what is the intrinsic enlightenment? When we call it intrinsic, that means that every sentient being already have. It's in us already, okay? But we didn't realize it. So that's why we are not enlightened. And this enlightenment is not something that we can pursue outside. It's not, we make it happen, or we do something to obtain it. On the other hand, it's like we have to let go in order to see our intrinsic enlightenment. Okay, so Zhongli used a lot of content from the awakening of faith. Okay, so in the Shastra, the awakening of faith, there are two kinds of enlightenment. The first one is called the original or intrinsic enlightenment, a Japanese Hangaku, okay, very pretty popular idea, which is underlying condition, which is the underlying condition of mind. And the second levels of enlightenment is called the incipient or experiential enlightenment, and Shingaku, which results from mind's liberation from ignorance. Okay. So here, in the awakening of faith, it talk about, it mentioned a lot about our true mind, the original enlightenment. And so, what is the true mind? Again, in the awakening of faith, it says that when the mind is free from its deluded activities, then all objects imagined as real vanish of themselves. What is real? The one and true mind pervades everywhere. Okay, so the true mind and deluded mind are the core concepts in this the awakening of faith. If you are interested in the true mind topic or Tathāgatagarbha, you can, the Chinese Chang Hwa Fashi just finished his talk on Chinese, the awakening of faith. You can go to our YouTube and kind of study about it. And so in the sutra, like I say in the beginning, that Buddha nature or Tathāgatagarbha is a big important topic in Mahayana school. The Buddha nature, the emphasis of Buddha nature is trying to balance the idea of emptiness. So, as you know, that Buddha always taught us that we have to practice middle way. Don't go to the extreme and let go of the dualism. Okay, the most fundamental dualism we have is existence and non-existence. 有跟无. Things exist or things not exist. Extreme. And Buddha said, no, we need to practice middle way, the Madhyamaka, that let go of the concept, don't trap into the concept of existence and non-existence. So either exist or not exist, dualism. So we have to transcend, go beyond the trap of this concept. And so when we practice at certain level, our mind will get to the level of emptiness. Levels of emptiness. I mentioned in last week that the Lankavatara Sutra mentioned about 7 kinds of emptiness, and the Shastra, the perfect wisdom, the perfection of wisdom Shastra talk about 16, 18, 20 kinds of emptiness. And different levels of emptiness are the level of practitioners achieve, but only one is ultimate. They all point to the Buddha nature, the Tathāgatagarbha. Okay, so it's that Buddha are trying to help a lot of practitioners. Actually, they are enter into very high levels of attainment and samadhi kind of thing. And then some of them will think that they got it, you know, they enlightened or something. And actually, Buddha said that no, that kind of samadhi is only kind of it's like alcohol that you get drunk. When you wake up, your attachment, your suffering still there. So we have to go to the highest, the emptiness. But some people went into nothingness, you know, just like I just disappear. So in India, in Indo philosophy, there are a group of people that stick to the idea of nothingness, and then certain people stick to the idea of self or God. So Buddha trying to, you know, let go of these two extremes and go to the middle way. So the Buddha nature is a very important idea, the truth that we need to know. And so what is the Buddha nature? Okay, Tathāgatagarbha means the womb or embryo of the dust gone or containing a Tathāgata. So it is basically Tathāgatagarbha is you know, the womb that can, you know, that can cultivate, incubate a baby. Okay, and Dharmatatu, or another term, Dharmatatu, literally means Buddha realm or Buddha substrate. And this is a central topic in Mahayana Buddhism, which explains how it is possible that all sentient beings can attain the state of Buddhahood. Okay, so this idea of Buddha nature was first mentioned in Mahayana Mahaparinirvana Sutra. Okay. I'm sorry, it should be the Mahaprajnaparamita Sutra. Okay. So anyway, this is a typo here. I paste the wrong thing. So here, when you see the definition of Buddha nature, then people will have another attachment saying that, oh, Buddha nature is like a womb, you know, like the mother can give birth to a baby. Okay, like you can make something happen, but it is not. And the Buddha nature used womb means that it's only an incubator, okay? And so it still needs father and mothers, the conditions of father and mothers to make the baby grow. So it's different from the idea of Brahman and Atma, that we will explain it later. And then get back to the Buddha nature, Tathāgatagarbha, and it's hopefully next year we have time that we'd like to share this sutra called Sirimala Sutra. Sirimala Sutra. Sirimala is a queen, and then she asked questions, and so it's very important sutra talk about Tathāgatagarbha. And in the sutra, it says that the Tathāgatagarbha is without any prior limit, is non-arising, and is indestructible, accepting suffering, having revulsion toward suffering, and aspiring to nirvana. O Lord, the Tathāgatagarbha is not a substantial self, nor a living being, nor fate, nor a person. The Tathāgatagarbha is not a realm for living beings who have degenerated into the belief of a substantially existent body, or for those who have contrary view, or who have minds bewildered by emptiness. Okay, I underscore the the last one. The who have minds bewildered by emptiness. A lot of high practitioners will trap into the so-called emptiness, and Buddha said that no, that is not it yet. Okay, so here in the Sramala Sutra, clearly explain what Tathāgatagarbha is not. Okay, and so, but what it is? What is Buddha nature? Okay, undescribable, formless, but we still need to talk about it. And also in the Sramala Sutras, another term related to the Buddha nature, Tathāgatagarbha, are Dharma Dhatu, Dharmakaya. And so these are another big topic as well that I just mentioned it for your references, and I'm not going to talk about it. I don't have time. So get back to when we have an idea about Tathāgatagarbha, and then when we get back to the classification of Zongmi's classification, you will find out that from the emptiness, we move on to the last level of the Tathāgatagarbha, and along the way, we have to practice the Madhyamaka, the middle way, to cut off our fundamental ignorance. And so when we are at the stage of emptiness, that we negate the attachment of subjectivity and objectivity, and we are still at a stage of non-awakening, because the true wisdom, the Buddha's wisdom, does not arise. So when we move on to the Ikayana teaching that reveals the Buddha nature, and then ultimately we will see our originally awakened true mind. Okay, that's the 5 levels that Zongmi provides for Buddha's teaching. And in Avatamsaka Sutra, Huayan Sutra, this is a very well-known saying that Buddha said when he got enlightened. He says that there is not a single sentient being that is not fully endowed with the wisdom of the Tathāgata. It is only on account of their deluded thinking and attachment that they do not succeed in realizing it. When they become free from deluded thinking, the all-comprehending wisdom, the spontaneous wisdom, and the unobstructed wisdom will then be manifest before them. Okay. So Buddha clearly tells us that, every sentient being has this Buddha nature, and we just need to let go of the deluded thinking. Okay. Then we will see all the Buddha nature that in every sentient being. So now, when we talk about Buddha nature, we touch the philosophical idea of the so-called noumenon, which is the come with the idea of phenomenon. In philosophy, you see the definition. A noumenon is a posted object or event that exists independently of human sense and or perception. The term noumenon is generally used in contrast with or in relation to the term phenomenon, which refers to any object of the senses. So here, it sounds like by definition that a Buddha nature is more like finding the noumenon that's fundamentally there. And then we try to let go the attachment to the impermanent phenomenon. Okay, and so all the philosophical schools try to discuss the topics on the noumenon and the phenomenon, and what is the spatial for Buddhism. That we need to know. And also, Buddhism is from India, so there are a lot of ideas and concepts that overlap with, or we use the same terms with Indian or Vedic tradition or religions that all the Buddhists need to know, especially for the fundamental differences of the idea of Buddha nature. So when people study ontology, think in itself, the same like noumenon, seeks the classification and explanation of entities, and it's the branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being. So as a Buddhist, if we want to clearly know what Buddha nature is and is not, then we have to, I encourage myself to spend some time to study other religions or philosophical thinking or thoughts about this noumenon and ontology. And here is what I found out. Okay, so we talk about cosmogonic process from scientific point of view, that, you know, there's a Big Bang thing in the beginning, the origin of existence, Big Bang. Before the Big Bang, this is just voidness, you know, things, nothing there, and then Big Bang, and then things start to formulate, and the galaxy, the satellites, and the planet, until the very right end, the human beings. So I think, therefore I am, that we have ascension beings on Earth. Okay, so here the origin of life come from, okay, the origin of existence come from Big Bang, and the origin of life, I don't know, from on Earth, scientifically on Earth, from molecules to single cells, etc. Evolution theory talk about that, but all the religions doesn't buy that. Okay. So how about the Asian, like Chinese Taoism? It's very deep theory about the formation of life. So there is called the chaos, the noumenon chaos. So for unknowable Wuji, then to great oneness, and then to, you know, yin and yang, and the yang and yin and yin and yang of Tai Chi. Okay, then form the so-called heaven and the so-called earth, and between heaven and earth, the human and all the sentient beings exist. Okay, so that's the Taoism. And again, what is the noumenon for Taoism? So there is called Wuji, you know, something that, you know, unexplainable, you know, the same, very similar to what we describe Buddha nature. Okay. How about Brahman in Hinduism? It's described like this: this is the true reality of things. And Brahman is shapeless, genderless, and bodiless. It cannot be described. It can only be experienced. We are all part of Brahman. And what we perceive as our individuality can be considered a quasi-illusion. Okay, this is Hinduism describes what Brahman is. Okay, it sounds, you know, close to what we understand about Buddha nature. But out of the Brahman, and there is called Trimurti. Okay, there are three gods in Hinduism that create this world. It's very similar to God, God, and so there is called Brahma, the deity of Brahma is the creator, earth element, and there is one called Vishnu, is preserver, and there is the god called Shiva, destroyer. Okay, so Christians God is also similar to like governor, operator, and destroyer. And so the fundamental, the way we describe Buddha nature and the way we hear about Brahman and Taoism's Wuji, Taoist and Wuji, we hear similar description about this. But what's the difference is that from the noumenon, how phenomena manifest. So now we from ordinary people point of view, and we practice, we understand the Dharma, and we try to reach the highest levels. And this is all the common path for all the religious practitioners. And at the same time, we have to think the other way. Okay, when we reach the highest level of each religion, and how does things happen? Okay, so for Christians, it's God used his form to create men and women, Adam and you know, and then the human and things go on. And then for Hinduism, from the Brahman, then there are three gods that create this world, and that has the sentient beings. Even though eventually the sentient beings, you know, through the purification, then they kind of emerge with the Brahman, become part of the Brahman. But the idea of creator, preserver, and destroyer, the idea of there is an entity, there is a God, there is a deity that makes this happen. It is a fundamental differences between Buddhism and the Hinduism. Also in the Isha Upanishad, Aoyisu, okay, so describe about liberation, that for liberation, know your Atma itself, which is motionless yet faster than mind. It is distant, it is near, it is within all, it is without all this. It is all-pervading, and he who beholds all beings in the self, and the self in all beings, he never turns away from it, the self. We keep hearing about the self. So, the fundamental differences between the Hinduism and Buddhism, Buddha say that dependent origination, not someone created it. Things happen, depends on causes and conditions. We call it dependent origination. And Buddha says that everything is impermanent and there is no self, a fixed self. And so in the major discourse on the denial of the elephant footprint in the Agama, that it says that the Blessed One has said, he who sees dependent arising sees the teaching. He who sees the teaching sees dependent arising. And in Tathāgatagarbha Sutra, right, the Sutra that Chang Hwa Fashi talk about it in Chinese. It's mainly on the topic of dependent origination. Say, whoever monks see conditions arising sees Dharma, and whoever sees Dharma sees the Buddha. So here, can we see the dependent origination? That's the key. So the Buddha nature is a womb that can cultivate everything, make everything happen, but it does not make it happen. It needs causes and conditions. And when causes and conditions come together, then there's the process called dependent origination, and the phenomena happen. Okay. So I kind of summarize. I keep mentioning the dependent origination on every level of Dongmi's classifications. If you can remember, the first level teachings for humans and heavenly beings, that the major concept is to understand the causes and effects and the karma and how it operates and trap us into the samsara. And so there is called karmic dependent origination, or dependent origination from the karma. And when we move on to Hinayana teaching, the major attachment is called the body and mind, the namarupa. And then there is called the dependent origination from the sensory system, sensation system, the sensory system. And then in the Mahayana teaching on phenomenal appearance, we talk about consciousness only, the vijnana, that the dependent origination is from alaya, or the eighth consciousness. And when we talk about the Mahayana teaching on destroying the appearance, and we talk about the emptiness of subjectivity and objectivity, and we just mentioned that the dependent origination is the emptiness, is with emptiness. So from the emptiness, it's just not negate all the attachment. It also refers to that the emptiness, out of emptiness, all apparent entity, distinctions, and the duality arise. But it didn't mention that what the out of which the which is. And then so when we get into the last level of Ikayana teaching of the true nature, and then Buddha mentioned that the idea of Tathāgatagarbha and Dharma Dhatu, and then so the dependent origination is from the Tathāgatagarbha or the Dharma Drum. And so that's a very important idea for all the Buddhists, that when we talk about Buddha nature, this undescribable, formless, shapeless, the pervades everywhere kind of nature, the Buddha nature, has the quality of dependent origination. It depends on the dependent origination that the sentient being or unenlightened beings see phenomena or generate attachment. And there is, even though it just only because that is dependent origination, so there is no so-called self from the Hinduism, that there is a self, control things or carry things, become a soul kind of thing. That Buddha say no self. No self doesn't mean we don't exist, okay? But just tell us that there is no, the idea of self is wrong. It's no self, because it's dependent arising, because it's impermanent, and there is no self for us to attach to, okay? Otherwise, we will be trapped. Okay, now, it's very complicated, very important topic about the two dependent origination. Tathāgatagarbha, dependent origination, or Dharma Drum, dependent origination, are two very important topics for Mahayana school. And for Tathāgatagarbha, dependent origination, again, from the major, if you study the Ashrangama Sutra and the awakening of faith, that describes the best, okay, about the Tathāgatagarbha dependent origination. Okay, so in the faith, the awakening of faith, the content describes that because of naturally realizing oneness with suchness, there emerges an unenlightened mind, and consequently its thought. Because of its non-enlightened state, the deluded mind produces the aspect, the activity of ignorance, the perceiving subject, the world of objects. And if you study strong Dharma Sutra, you hear this a lot, that in other words, there is a very crucial step that why sentient beings are sentient beings. Why sentient beings are not enlightened is the unenlightened state. Non-enlightened state, unawakening state. So, 一念不觉生三气. So it's like in the strong Dharma Sutra, it describes the stage. Why we are awakened and become unawakened is because we try to see or perceive something. So this kind of very subtle intention or the mind state that made us become ignorant and made us have the idea of subjectivity and objectivity. Okay. And continue. Once we have the so-called three aspects, the three subtle aspects, and then conditioned by the incorrectly conceived world of objects, the deluded mind produces 6 coarse aspects. They continue, okay, our mind, once we have the duality of subjectivity and objectivity, then our mind continues to generate the 6 coarse aspects, as the aspect of the discriminating intellect, that we think we know something, and the aspect of continuity, and this idea continue, and the aspect of attachment. So we try to make judgments and make the grasping or non-grasping, and then the aspect of speculations on names and letters, and we start to know that this is a cup, this is a mouse, we start to have a name in this, and then the aspect giving rise to all kinds of karma, and then the aspect of suffering attached to the effects of karma. Okay, so this is a theory of the Tathāgatagarbha school about dependent origination, and this is very well studied in the Shrangama Sutra and the awakening of faith. And the other one is called Dharma Drum Dependent Origination. And I have to mention that I just briefly talk about it, and all these topics need to go into very detail to explain well, so that you won't get further confusion. But I need to mention this because, just like I say, that all the religions talk about the noumenon and phenomenon ontologically, talk about things, the essence of the thing. And so it really makes our Buddha nature different, is that our Buddha nature, the things happen out of Buddha nature is by dependent origination. Okay, so Buddhist studies, different schools will unavoidably need to face this topic of dependent origination. And what is dependent origination? It's really, we have to see it directly. Okay, so like Buddha say, if we can see the dependent origination, we see the Buddha, we see the Dharma, and we see the Buddha. And so different schools try to explain what the dependent origination is, and develop methods for us to practice so that we can see this dependent origination. So the last one, the last famous one, is the Dharma Drum dependent origination. It goes like this: all things arise simultaneously without any mutual obstruction. From the previous dependent origination, there is it's sequential, things might co-arise, many factors co-arise, come together and arise, but there is a pre-prior and there is poster. It's sequential. So I scolded at you yesterday, and so today I see you, you just give me a dirty look. This is really a sequential. So the dependent origination has a sequential frame. But for Dharma Drum, the Huayan school, they said very special. All things arise simultaneously without any mutual obstruction. This is a very, very deep, very special idea. And we have to talk about several philosophical thinking from Huayan school. But anyway, there are 3 points that we need to, just get familiar now, is called the views of Dharma Drum in Huayan school. The first, in order to understand the Dharma Drum dependent origination, in order to understand why Huayan people think that all things arise simultaneously without any mutual obstruction. 3 views. The first view is the true emptiness and absolute mark. The view of non-obstruction between principle and the phenomena. Or, principle and the phenomena. And the view of universal inclusion. The Huayan school has so-called 10 unbelievable, or 10 make it 10 remarkable gates. Okay, try to explain this. So if we have time, that maybe sometime we can talk about Huayan school. And so this is just trying to give you some impression, There is called Dharma Drum dependent origination, and what that is, and all the dependent origination, all the theories of dependent origination are the Buddhas, all the patriarchs, all the masters, all the scholars try to help us, practice, so that we can see the intrinsic Buddha nature. Okay, so now I would like to make a little summary from Zhongmi's Sastra on the investigation of the origin of life. That in the beginning, Buddha talked about dependent origination, because it's a fundamental difference between Hinduism and Buddhism. And then because everything is dependent origination, so the conditions, the causes and conditions is ever changing. So through practice, you can see, you can really see the end, so-called impermanence. And when we can see all the existence are impermanent, and we will understand the idea of so-called no self. There is no fixed entity, no fixed self that exists, that the self can say, I want to do this, I want to do that. I make this decision. I want this and I want that. And this means self. And Buddha said, no, this is self. You like it, you don't like it. You are driven, first level by the karma, second level by your 8th consciousness, and the 6th consciousness, all 8th consciousness, come together. This is only the mental activity, not you. You are not your master, okay, the self. And then through the contemplation and realization of no self, and you will see the nature of emptiness. When we see the nature of emptiness, we detach all the attachments. If we attach, you see, if there is, if we use this as an analogy, okay. If there is the energy, equal energy everywhere. If there is attachment, we grab it, and this energy pattern change, and formulate something, and then we lose the sense, we lose the ability to see the totality of the emptiness, and we lose the ability to see the nature of emptiness. So, and then when, we can see the nature of emptiness, basically Buddha says that's the Buddha nature that can generate things. And it's already in us, in every one of us. Again, be fresh, no self. There is no permanent underlying substance that can be called the soul. Instead, the individual is compounded of 5 factors or 5 aggregates or 5 skandhas that are constantly changing, that we need to practice to see it, not understand it by knowledge. Okay, so all the practitioners, we need to encourage each other to practice, practice, and practice. The emptiness, sunyata, is actually, emptiness is kind of wisdom. Okay, so prajna, the wisdom, always go with emptiness. And the emptiness, the sunyata, the wisdom, negate all the attachments. And also, on the other hand, it's a non-implicative negation. Sunyata is seen not as a negation of existence, but rather as the differentiation out of which all apparent entities, distinctions, and dualities arise. Okay. Buddha nature has the capacity to sustain things happen. It's not nothingness. So Buddhist practice, Buddhist teaching, middle way. If we insist there is something, is this something permanent, then we go to, like the Brahman, like the God, like there is things that create this world, and this kind of idea. But if we have to let go of it. But at the same time, we cannot let go of the idea that there is noumenon. And this noumenon can provide the process of dependent origination. So it's not the other extreme called nothingness, nihilism. Nothing exists. So the idea of Buddha nature, the idea of dependent origination, the idea of no self, try to detach the extreme of the God things, God things, and also detach the idea of nothing exists, the nihilism. So very important concept, the middle way. And then so when we talk about nirvana and enlightenment, then it becomes like nirvana is actually the definition of blowing out or quenching all of the activity of the worldly mind and its related suffering. It's the guideline. Okay, nirvana is not like I sit there and nothing happens, go into the samadhi and liberate it. It's not. When you come out of the samadhi, you still suffer. The attachment is still there. Okay. Enlightenment, big topic as well. Body, awakening, perfect knowledge. Okay, see, this is positive thing. The body, the Buddha nature, is related to awakening mind, the perfect knowledge of wisdom, the illuminated or enlightened intellect of a Buddha. Okay, so when we talk about emptiness, meaning that we are bridging to the next step of enlightenment of or awakening of the Buddha nature. Okay. Very important idea. Every sentient being is fully endowed with the wisdom of the Tathāgata, the Buddha nature. So our precept not killing, not stealing, no false sexual, no false sexual misconduct, no false talk, no alcohol, those kind of things, is trying to help us before we get enlightened, help us to treat people, treat all sentient beings equally. Equally see and interact with sentient beings. Very important practice for all of us in our daily life, because we believe, Buddhists believe, that all the sentient beings, even a little ant in the soil, they have Buddha nature. Just like they, due to the samsara, due to the karma, they temporarily rebirth as an ant. That doesn't mean they will take longer than us to get enlightened. You never know. Okay, we never know. So treat, see things, see people, interact with things, interact with people, including this environment, equally with compassion, is our practice. And okay, time is up. The stage. Originally, we are awakened. We have a true mind, and unfortunately, there is things that we try to see something, and we come awakening, and then we generate. Because awakening, we have subjectivity and objectivity and ignorance, and then we generate a 6 crosses of aspects. And we have the attachment to the self and the Dharma and the self. And then we generate greed, hatred, and ignorance. Okay, so that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is, okay, now we understand the causes and effects and karmas. We are in the samsara. We are ordinary, enlightened people. We need to practice the Four Noble Truths to cut off the suffering. At the same time, we have to initiate our bodhicitta. We cannot just like self-liberation only. We have to include all the sentient beings within our practice. It's called bodhicitta. And then we let go of the attachment to the phenomena, consciously arise or phenomena. And then we practice emptiness, non-duality, to let go of the attachment of subjectivity and objectivity, and then practice middle ways to cut off our fundamental ignorance that we need to perceive to exist. We need to see in order to understand this kind of fundamental ignorance. And then through this kind of practice, eventually, we will see the Buddha nature, the Tathāgatagarbha, the true mind that originally in us. Okay, time is up. I don't know if we have questions. We are going to have Christmas and New Year.
Do we have time for questions? We may not, right?
Yeah, I can answer 1 or 2 short questions.
Okay, anyone, if you have any questions, please raise your hand.
Too complicated, huh? Too much stuff.
You can pick on your screen the reactions area, and you can raise your hand, and we can have Fashi answer some of your questions.
Okay. And well, while you are thinking, if you want to hear some certain topic, related to, I talked about yogacara last couple of years, and I believe that Tathāgatagarbha in 2010 or something, and then if there's a certain sutra or topics that you would like to understand more, you can also give us some suggestions. So our Venerable has different practice on certain things, certain methods, and certain sutra and sastras that we can share with you. Shu Quan Chu, can you unmute yourself? Shu Quan. Can you unmute?
Yeah, I can unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I have a question, maybe a basic question. It's about the concept of Tathāgatagarbha. So I just checked the Wikipedia and also from your talk that it is translated as, I mean, its original meaning might be the thus come, thus gone.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, like in Chinese, we translate it as like 如来, which means thus come.
Mm-hmm.
Do like we prefer that this translation in Chinese, like
I did not use thus come in Chinese because Chinese language, especially the classical Chinese, Wenyan, you use thus come. It has deeper meaning that more close to the original meaning of Tathāgatagarbha or the Buddha nature. But if you translate into English, saying thus come, it sounds like there is a entity that do come, but actually in Chinese it's just like as if it comes, but it doesn't come.
so subtle. You mean like the concept of
Tathāgatagarbha means the warmth of and Chinese like to use 如来, like in English it's thus come, but the translation doesn't catch the flavor of this classical Chinese 如来. If I would translate 如来 in English, that would be as if it comes, or as if does come, but it does not come.
So somehow the Chinese word 如 has two meaning, like it has the meaning of
it's
and
very profound meaning.
And also has the meaning of as if.
如, and also 如 is a very complicated word. Okay. 如如不动, no. It's like as if it's not moving, but it's not that. It's, people say like like lock, wood lock, it's not moving, right? But we will use 如如不动, means your mind is still alive, but it's not moving. So use 如如 with 不动. So 如 is a very, so forgive me, I didn't choose the thus come.
It's not moving, but it's not moving.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the not moving, what you think not moving. It's not that, but it's not moving.
and same as well to Ru Lai. You know, it's like it's coming and it's not coming.
Okay, thanks.
So in other words, we have to experience it, not understand it from the language, because it's beyond the language. Because the language can cause a lot of misunderstanding.
Misleading
understanding. Yeah, well, Fashi, you talk about if there's any sutra we would like to, in the future, we would like to learn. You mentioned two sutras that I think is very interesting. One is the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, one is the Srimala Sutra.
Mm-hmm.
I've never read those two sutras. I think it's very interesting because it's related to today's final topic, the Tathāgatagarbha. Gosh, I don't know how to pronounce that either.
I've practiced many times. Tathāgatagarbha. Okay. Anyway, Srimala Sutra is manageable because there's only one scroll, and the other one is the Parinirvana.
Mahaparinirvana.
Yeah,
Mahaparinirvana.
That's also a good one. Okay, I'll try. I like this to try, and I start reading the Srimala Sutra. It's very, very profound. With the basically Tathāgatagarbha school, the sutra, and hopefully one day I can talk about the Hua Yan. Dharma Drum too.
Very ambitious.
It's very important, you know, because we already have Buddha nature in us, so everything manifests from our Buddha nature. If we can see things that way, instead of like, oh, my mind is deluded, it's because my mind is defiled, so that's why things happen. So it's a different approach, you know. You can see, oh, my mind is defiled, so that's why I need to purify my mind in order to see the true nature. But the Hawaiian school is that you're already pure, you know, and it's just like the ocean and wave, you know. The phenomena is the wave, but you never depart from your ocean. So everything 10 realms arise simultaneously at the same time, because and that's why there's no contradiction between all the phenomena. That's a different way of these things. Well, it is very ambitious. I just like started to pay more attention on this school. Okay, time is up. Thank you very much.